Hey guys, this week we're going to take a look at a Pauper deck that is featuring another recent mechanic. Last week I had taken a look at Soulbond as it appeared in AVR. This week I am going to focus on a deck that is bringing in other mechanics from Innistrad block, and if you couldn't figure out, that would be Morbid and Undying. Now, Undying is an ability where a creature with Undying it will come back immediately from the grave to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, as long as it did not have a +1/+1 counter on it previously when it died. Morbid is an ability where a spell is going to get more powerful if a creature had died earlier this turn. So the whole thing with these two mechanics is that things like to die, and when things die, good things happen. There's a lot of ways you can work around this. Usually this is considered kind of a drawback, but the fact that you have some abilities in other cards to make your own sacrifices and kill stuff off allows you to basically choose when you want these things to happen. We're going to take a look here. Most of the Morbid stuff came around in green, most of the Undying was black, but here's kind of the best choices for those as I've personally found. First we have the Festerhide Boar. This is a 3/3 Trampler for 4, and if the Morbid ability is activated, it comes in with an additional +2/+2 counters, making it a 5/5 Trampler for 4. This is one of the best. Sometimes, if you see a lot of decks, let me back up a second. A lot of decks out there using these Morbid abilities will only run 3 of these because it is still a bit of a heavy casting cost. There are quite a few people who have run different options of this. I have talked about this kind of deck before, so it is something that you may or may not come into with casual games. So something to keep in mind. This is, personally I like 4. It is such a bomb creature. Getting mana is never really an issue. And it's really the issue is if you can kill something off. The next thing is the Ulvenwald. I'm going to say that's how you say it, bear. This bear comes into play. It's a 2/2 for 3, but if a creature has died this turn and the Morbid is activated, it comes into play and gives +2/+2, 2 +1/+1 counters to a creature of your choice. Now, a lot of times this choice is going to be the bear itself, but depends on the situation. You may have other things that you would rather pump up. One thing to keep in mind is the fact, as I said earlier, the Undying creatures, you never want to use a bear's Morbid ability to put counters on a 1/1 young wolf. What that'll do, sure, it becomes a 3/3, but it keeps it from activating the Undying ability. The Undying ability, as I said, only is activated when there is no +1/+1 counter on that creature and it dies. So these 3 are going to be kind of the big set in ours. It's nice to have kind of this mana curve going on. The Young Wolf is a 1-drop, and it's a really nice 1-drop. It's something that a lot of players will just kind of let through and do damage because they don't want to kill it off. Let's take a look real quick at the other 2 cards that are working with this ability. Tragic Slip is the first one. This is a 1-costed -1/-1 kill spell. But if Morbid is activated, then it gives -13/-13. So this is a mediocre. I just got rid of one of them. But anyways, this is a mediocre spell until the Morbid ability is activated, and then it can kill anything that you can find in Pauper. This is something that was kind of appreciated when it came to drafts. I'm going to try and find this card and put it back. So it was kind of an important card when it came to drafting triple AVR, but at the same time, it's something that... Where did my Tragic Slip go? Oh well. Anyways, we're not going to worry about that. It could be hit or miss if you could not find a way to activate that Morbid ability. Thankfully, this deck gives us options to do that. Just keep in mind, there is 3 Tragic Slips. Go check out the deck at puremtgo.com if you're ever wondering. So Hunger the Howlpack is the second one here. This is giving you an ability to put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. And with the Morbid ability, it allows you to put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature. This is something, I know you'll point this out in one of my example games. I did make a mistake with an interaction with the bear, so go see if you can figure it out. But this is something that works great. It gives you an opportunity, so if they do kill off one of your creatures, you can make another one an outstanding size. It's quite powerful for, giving 3 +3/+3 that is permanent for 1 green is a really great ability. So next thing I wanted to look at is I wanted options to bring stuff back. Things are going to be dying, and you want things to die, but I wanted to bring stuff back. So what I have here is Unearth. This is going to work really well. I had worked with adding Undying to the deck as opposed to Unearth, but what Undying does, Undying gives target creature Undying. And that doesn't work so well when we have so many things. You have the boar, you have the bear, and you have the hunger, the howl pack, and all of these things give a +1/+1 counter. So it was really hard to find a point in time where there was a creature that was going to die without the counter, and you could get that Undying. Now, Undying Evil does give you some great options. If you find yourself in a situation where you have played a bear, for example, without the activated Morbid ability, you can use Undying Evil to kill it, or I'm sorry, in response to it dying. Say your opponent targets it with Doomblade, so your bear is going to die. Now, in response to that, you target it with Undying Evil. The bear is going to die, but come back as a 3/3 bear, and at the same time, because a creature did die, it activates the Morbid ability as well. So now your bear can come back as a 5/5 if your opponent had killed it. And this was a great move, but I found too many situations where it just wasn't happening that way. And instead, Unearth works really great because it allows me to bring back bears, young wolves, but more importantly, it's going to bring back these two creatures. The first thing here is the Phyrexian Ranger. This I almost have as a staple in every deck that I am running with black. The 2 colorless is easily accommodating to a 2-color deck, and the fact that it allows you to draw a card is great. There's not a lot of draw, as I say a million times, in black and green, so being able to draw a card off of Ragers is great, and Unearth allows you to increase your Rager count basically from 4 to 7 possible. The next thing is Fume Spitter. Fume Spitter is a very important card to this deck. Not only does it balance out your mana curve as a 1-drop, but it also gives you the ability to basically decide when something dies. Fume Spitter is going to give you the ability that you can sacrifice it and force the Morbid, force the Undying if you have to on a wolf. It's going to be the easiest way for you to kill a creature. If you have no other creatures in play, say Fume Spitter is the only thing you have in play and your opponent has no creatures, you can use the Fume Spitter and sacrifice it targeting itself. That's something that I know I at one point didn't think it should work that way, but it does. Because you choose the target for it before the Fume Spitter actually sacrifices. So you can sacrifice the Spitter to itself and activate the Morbid ability off of Tragic Slip or Hunger or any of these creatures. So that's going to be the easiest way for you to kill something outside of combat on your own. The next thing that I brought in is Altar's Reap. Now, this is a great card. It allows you to draw 2 cards, but the drawback is the fact that you have to sacrifice a creature. This is what holds this card back from something like Sign in Blood, which is played in mono black control in a lot of the competitive decks. Now, Sign in Blood is the opportunity to draw cards off of 2 life, and it's more likely that you end up with 2 life available as opposed to having a creature that you want to or can sacrifice available. Altar's Reap has to have that creature in order to be able to draw the cards, so you really kind of don't get that balance. What's really nice, though, is it also has a colorless. So whereas Sign in Blood is a double black mana cost, Altar's Reap is a colorless and black. This becomes more interactive with a deck that is running a second color. So that makes this more approachable for a deck like this. It also gives you, again, an opportunity to sacrifice creatures for Morbids and Undyings as necessary. Let's see, Diabolic Edict is really the only kill option you have in here other than the 3 Tragic Slips. The deck is not really heavy on creature kill. These could easily be replaced with something like Doomblade, but I didn't want to, lose to something that was black. I wanted an option to kill black creatures. So you can easily make that switch if you prefer. Again, I probably said this a million times, but Diabolic Edict is one of those things that it cannot target a creature, so you're kind of relying on your opponent's board state to be able to make that target what you want. But I did need a little bit of extra kill spells. The deck does run, like I said, Tragic Slips, and a lot of times you can get stuff like the Fume Spitter to kill stuff, and interactions through combat to kill stuff, but it's really going to be your best option for almost targeted kill. The last thing I brought in is the Life Staff. I brought in 2 copies of this because it gives us options for drawing cards. for gaining life. Using these Ragers to draw cards is going to cost you life, and there are a lot of opportunities that you're going to miss. Life gain is very powerful, and being able to gain some life is very important. You can attach it to almost anything, but one of your best options is going to be Fume Spitter, because again, not only does that allow you to choose when something is triggered as far as Morbid is concerned, but it also allows you the opportunity to trigger the life gain as well if it's equipped with a staff. So it was just one of these things that I found is playing a lot of decks. There were, some that were much faster than this. This deck can be a little slow because you are waiting till about the mid game to be able to get these activated Morbid abilities on these creatures. So getting the life staff and getting that little bit of extra life gain was just enough to kind of hold things off. It also makes things like your original Young Wolf more powerful in a mid game because it's a 2/1 and they're a little bit more prone to trying to kill it, and it comes back as a 2/2. It works pretty well in this deck. I guess the last thing I'll talk about is the mana base. I originally had 4 Evolving Wilds, but decided to cut it back to 3. Having lands come in tapped is just I don't know. It's frustrating. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. You don't have that mana available to you, so by reducing the number of tapped lands, and you see I am running quite a lot of them, this means that I have access to my mana sooner. Now again, this deck is kind of a mid-game deck. You do end up in the mid-game a lot, and so it's not so terrible because you can get rid of some of these tap lands early on and find plenty available open mana when it's time to play these creatures like the Bear and the Boar. So it's not terrible, but I still, I like having it to limit the number of cards, my land cards in deck. It thins the deck out, and it also gives me the opportunity to search out a color that I specifically need. I also brought in 4 of the cycling lands, 2 of each color, and this was a result of finding not enough card draw. Now, the deck is running full set of Ragers, it is running almost a full set of Altar's Reap, but I really wanted even more draw abilities. Rarely was I ever cycling on Earth, and that's something you don't want to usually cycle. But these were a good compromise because I found a lot of times that I was getting land flooded. I am only running 23 lands, but being able to cycle away some lands is just that much more powerful. And of course I brought in a single copy of the Rot Farm because it gives me the ability to bounce one of these cycling lands that I may have gotten myself in a situation in the early game where I had to play one of these. And if that does occur, then you do have at least one option to return it to your hand so you can cycle it. The one of is not so troublesome. If I was running more than one of the Rot Farm, it might slow my mana base down a lot, but having the one in there as kind of a protection kind of clause thing is not so bad. So that works really well. The one thing I will say is this deck is rather creature light, even for a deck that's looking to kill creatures. If you look at other decks, you might find some that run other stuff some that are just like heavier on the creature cost. My phone keeps buzzing, that's why I'm a little distracted. Heavier on the creature count. So, this is a little bit creature light. I did find myself multiple times trying to reduce the number of non-creature spells because I have ended up with hands that are, okay, great, I've got Morbid, I've got a way to enact Morbid, but I have no creatures. I have Unearths, but nothing have died, so I can't use it. So it's definitely frustrating, and if you are going to play with this, you want to try and keep these non-creature spells to an absolute minimum in order to really be able to get the most out of this. So, hope you enjoyed this deck. Go definitely check out the example games to see it in action, and definitely sit down with it, and if you want, edit. I mean, feel free to make your own changes and whatnot. This is the great thing about casual play, is that there is no one right answer. You can do whatever you want with a deck and just have a lot of fun with building and playing.